to Athletes to Entrepreneurs, the Alumni Journey. I'm Rob Finkelstein, founder and CEO of Alumni Direct, where we've set out to create a platform for athletes and other alumni to network and connect in one centralized platform. And this show is all about athlete transition out of sports. It's a major issue today between mental health, financial literacy, and a lot of other areas. So we interview former collegiate and professional athletes, and we talk about their journey into successful entrepreneurship and business leadership. So excited today to have Dre Baldwin. How you doing, Dre?
I'm doing amazing, Rob. How about yourself?
I'm doing fantastic. And so Dre was a college basketball player, and he's going to get into the whole story, but he played at Penn State Altoona. And then after that, he went into professional basketball, played many years overseas, but ultimately his game turned into entrepreneurship. And he just saw so much value in leadership and mentorship and just creating different types of content. He's a professional speaker. He's an author. He's a podcast host. My head is spinning, Dre, because we talked about, I think it was like, I think it's like 2,900 podcast episodes now, something like that, or over 3,000. Have you hit 3,000 yet? Or it's getting pretty close, right?
Not yet. I got a couple more to go.
Couple more to go. I'm getting close to 100, so I got a long way to go. And he's written many books. He's been a TEDx speaker. So I always, Dre, I'd like to ask, what growing up, how did sports shape you, like leading up into college?
I was always into sports growing up, and hopefully I can live up to that background you just shared there. But I was always into sports growing up. I had the athletic genetics. My parents are not even that tall, but I became pretty tall. I'm 6'4" now. So played every sport, tried a little bit of everything, at least the things I was exposed to. Maybe I would have played a different sport had I been exposed to other stuff, but tried a little bit of everything. Finally got around to basketball around age 14, but I was always competitive, and I was always, again, I had the athleticism. And I had two parents at home, so they weren't going to let me be out doing anything crazy. So I basically had to take that energy that I had as a young boy and channel it into something positive. So it was either go to school or play sports. So those were my options, and I chose sports. Well, I went to school too, but I put more effort into sports than I did school. I'll say that.
Now, let me ask you a question. When you were a kid, did you dream about it being a professional athlete? And if so, was it basketball or another sport?
Yes, I did dream about being a professional athlete. That was a goal I had from a very young age. I didn't know what sport it was going to be, though. So I thought I was going to be like Deion Sanders, because I played a little bit of football, a little bit of baseball. So if you're from that era, we all thought we were going to be Deion, especially young black kids. We all thought we'd be Deion because he was flashy. He had the style, he had all the attention, and he was pretty damn good at what he did. So I thought I would do that, but never really played football. I never got to the point of putting the pads on, so I never really played football. And then I did play baseball, but I was mediocre at best. So my ceiling, Rob, I probably would have been a bench player for high school. That's probably as far as I would have baseball. So good thing is I changed over to basketball.
That's good. Yeah, I always joke around. I say, I want to be a Major League Baseball player, which is true, but I just didn't have the talent. So now I do podcasts and other things. So let's fast forward into college. And as I talked about transition being a major issue, were there, and I know things have changed today because it's probably getting a little bit better, but was there education on what's next after sports when you were at school?
No, and if there was, I didn't know about it. So I don't think so. So there were programs the only program we had for athletes when I was in school. Now, mind you, this is Division III school, so I don't know what it's like at other colleges, but at that level, the only thing we ever had was we had to go to a mandatory meeting about hazing. That was a thing back then. You had to go to this mandatory meeting about you can't haze the other members, and it was all the athletes and also all the fraternities and sororities, but there were no programs about transitioning. Yeah,
and I tell you what, I talked to, something we're pretty passionate about. I talked to one guy who played football, one of my other guests at University of Buffalo, and he just talked about, he just really wishes there was not just one workshop, but maybe like a 4-week class or like a mandatory class that athletes had to take, because it just, right. A lot of other students are getting, different things, the internships, all things along the way, but just something that would have helped them out.
Yeah, give us a 1.5 credit class on just transitioning, make it a whole semester or something like that. That's a good idea. Somebody should do that.
Yeah, well, we're trying. We're trying to get a group of partners together in different disciplines, mental health, financial literacy, and just trying to kind of extend it out to not only the current athletes, but also a lot of the alumni athletes that tend to get forgotten. So let's talk a little bit about networking, connecting, which obviously is important to us. Talk about the importance of it, especially when you're playing.
Especially when you're playing, you mean for business purposes or for basketball purposes?
For probably both, but more likely business purposes. Just like even starting as early as high school, like just to start building that network.
Yeah, it's a great thing to do when you're playing. Unfortunately, I wasn't really thinking about that much back when I was playing. All I was really thinking about was, and I'll give you a little anecdote here. I did some work with the NBA's G League, the developmental league, and this is a few years after I stopped playing. And they brought me in to speak to. I spoke to every team in the G League. We would do 2 teams at a time, and I was there to speak specifically about transitioning. What are you going to do after basketball? And I remember the first meeting we went to, because every time we did it, it would be me, another outside consultant, maybe 2 outside people plus me, and then a couple people from the league. And I remember the first meeting, I just wanted to know who I was talking to. Because anytime I speak to an audience, I just want to get a feel for their temperature. And I said, uh, do these guys, are they excited to come to these meetings to hear people like me talk? And she said, no. They just want to play ball. Because all they care about is making it to the NBA. They don't really want to hear this. And there'll maybe be 2 out of every 10 wanted to actually hear this. So to answer your question there, it would be a good thing if I had been thinking about it, because when you're an athlete, and I would say this to the players in the G League at the time, that being a professional athlete is like a passport, because it gets you into rooms that you otherwise wouldn't get into. And it can get calls answered and emails replied to that otherwise would not get responded or replied to because of your status, because of where you are, because of the space that you occupy, because so few people get to occupy it. So I would utilize that had I had known about it, but I didn't really start seriously doing a lot of networking and connecting until I started thinking about, hey, I'm a entrepreneur now, I'm a businessman now. Because in the business world, Rob, everything is about connecting and collaborating and working together with other people. Whereas in the sports world, the essence of sports is competition, beating
Right.
everything. So when I was an athlete, I didn't really like talking to a whole lot of people. I didn't like working out with other players. I liked doing things that positioned me to beat everybody. So I wasn't really trying to make friends.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was talking to an agent, and he just said kind of what you alluded to, like how you didn't do it. He said that most athletes don't, network and connect when they're relevant
Mhm.
while they're playing, and then all of a sudden they're done. They're kind of expecting like things to just kind of fall in their lap, and we encourage. I think it's important, even like I mentioned at a younger age, like even at high school, you're surrounded by people. You've got your coaches, which are instrumental in your careers. You've got maybe family, friends. So utilize that and make sure to build that network. It was interesting. I was talking to a couple current college students. Who's a freshman and 2 sophomores, and playing different sports. And I had talked about networking connect. I said, hey, we never have done it. Like we really wish we would. And so they're young enough at the age to understand the importance of it, and to still be able to do it. So definitely encourage that.
Yeah. So the thing is, as you're talking, and I'm thinking about it more, when you're playing, and you probably work with athletes in a wider range of sports than I have experience with. Mostly, I know a lot of guys from the football and the basketball world. And football and basketball world, you get a lot of young black guys from the inner city, and we all think we're going to the pro league, the NFL or the NBA. And therefore, we don't need the network. We don't need to
Right.
connect, because I'm being an NBA. I'm being an NFL. I'm gonna make this much. Look how much this guy's making. I'm gonna make that much. I don't need to network or connect with anybody,
Right.
because this is not going to end. And if it does, if and when it does end, I'll have so much money it doesn't matter. That was the mindset that I had when I
Right.
was playing. So I think it may be different if you're dealing with athletes who are in, or I guess what they call non-revenue sports, where there's not a big
Right.
league or a big opportunity to make money. So the soccer team or the fencing team or the golf
Yeah.
team, many of them probably know, okay, at the end of college, this is over. So
Yeah.
let me
Yeah. For
start
sure.
thinking about the next step now, because I can see it. Whereas us ball players and football players, we're thinking this is going to go on forever until it doesn't.
Yeah, no, I see that. I mean, I was a runner, so like for me, I was
Right.
good, but I wasn't going anywhere. I wasn't going to be an Olympian or any. I wasn't an elite runner. So to your point, for me, like I didn't really think about it. And right, even today, which actually kind of it's a good transition to the next question of talk a little about your thoughts, both positive and negative, on NIL, name, image, likeness.
I think well, obviously it's a good thing for the athletes to be able to cash in on their name and their brand, because listen, the schools have been cashing in on it, so why not let them make some money off of it? And as we can see clearly, since it's come around, Rob, there's plenty of money to go around.
Yeah,
I think you hear my son yelling right now. He's making we can't control him right now, but anyway, uh,
it's okay.
yeah, obviously there's plenty of money to go around. So it's not like this was stopping anybody, and everybody benefits because the athlete makes the money. The brands get to connect with the athlete and use that attention, that name, image, and likeness to draw some attention back to themselves. Now, the drawback of it, as I'm seeing, especially at the Division One level, where there's big money being thrown around both internally with the schools and the coaches and the programs and also with the players. Is that now you see players bouncing around so much that I hear a lot of coaches kind of getting uncomfortable with this. Like, okay, now I got to kind of toady up to these players, and the balance of power kind of has been inverted to where the coaches feel like they got to sell themselves to the players rather than the players got to sell themselves to the coach, because the player can easily leave from one school to the next, and players are going to like 4 schools in 4 years, which is very interesting thing. I wonder what that would have been like had I had that opportunity when I was playing. So I think the colleges are going to have to come up with a way to rein the players in when it comes to the bouncing around thing. I don't think the money thing's an issue, because you can make money if you're a regular college student, just you're majoring in biology and you just want to make some money based off your skills while you're in school. There's nobody stopping you. But when you're a player, you're stopped. There shouldn't be a reason to stop them either. They should be able to make money too, and they're generating a lot of money. So why not? But as far as the bouncing around thing, I think the coaches have a legitimate challenge to that. The schools themselves as well. We're putting all this into you all and trying to build a program. You can't just come here and leave whenever you feel like it with no penalty. So I think if they put the penalties back in for transferring, sitting out a year, and all that stuff, I think that'll cause players to kind of calm down. Okay, I'm not starting this year. Let me earn my starting spot. I'll stay here for 2-3 years and actually create some continuity in the program, because that allows the fans to buy in. Because I'll tell you one other thing, if you don't mind. I remember going to, you ever heard about the basketball tournament, that $1 million tournament, open tournament, basketball in the summertime? Okay, so this thing called the basketball tournament. And basically, you can't play in it if you have an NBA contract, because their contracts don't allow you to play in those tournaments. But players who play overseas or players who play anywhere basketball outside of the NBA, they put teams together and they play in this tournament every year, and there's a $1 million prize. It costs no money to get in. There's $1 million prize if you win. So the biggest teams that have come to compete in this are alumni teams. So you spoke about the University of Buffalo. All right, the University of Buffalo won the tournament maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and it's every summer. So they're about to have another one in a couple months. So all the players are just alumni who used to play at Buffalo. Most of the time they're playing overseas now, or it might be a guy who's recently retired. But this is high level basketball. So anyway, I'm bringing that up to say this. I went to the tournament to watch when it was in Philadelphia a couple times, and Syracuse had a team, and there's an alumni team. So players who had played, maybe still playing overseas, maybe recently retired, and their fans, the fans from Syracuse, people understand how far Syracuse is from Philadelphia. Right. That's a nice little drive.
Yeah,
they filled the arena. Their fans from Syracuse, they filled the arena. I mean, all these, and they all had on Syracuse gear because that's who you knew who they were. And I'm like, man, they have such a strong fan base because they build a relationship with the players. When the players are there for 3 or 4 years, they come to know these guys. And these guys haven't been playing at Syracuse. And these are guys who have worked in the NBA for 8-9 years. Now they're out of the league. They're playing in this tournament. So they haven't been in Syracuse for 10 years. But the fans still connect with them so much that they would drive to Philadelphia to see them play in a winner-take-all $1 million tournament. And the point I'm making here, Rob, is that the continuity of having the players and seeing them year after year after year builds up the fan base. The fans generate the attention generates the money. So if the players are just going in and out and it starts to become like the NBA, then that continuity goes away and it ends up turning off the faucet.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I mean, that's, it's a good transition into alumni talk, because you kind of hit on that, like just that power of the alumni and them coming back and watching. It was kind of interesting. Like our schools, like the schools like Duke and North Carolina, are they represented or not as much because the players, a lot of them go to the NBA or still in the NBA? How does that work?
Yeah, you see all kinds of. So this tournament is like a 64 team tournament. So there's a lot of colleges in there. So a lot of them are schools that are like college town schools. So think of Syracuse. When you think of Syracuse, you only think of Syracuse, the college.
Right. Gotcha.
Penn State, you think of State College, or Wichita State. So it's a lot of schools, especially middle America schools, where there's nothing else going on in that town besides the college. You see those. Duke and North Carolina, I don't think either of them has put a team in yet, but the University of Miami has had a team. A lot of big colleges have had teams. I'll send you the website when we get done this conversation where you can see it. But it's getting bigger every year. So every year, the tournament will announce like, hey, what if Duke put a team in? And then they would throw some names out there to try to compete these players. And it works. The thing is, it works because then the next year you see more and more colleges. So it started out as kind of like this open thing where just random guys from rec leagues would put teams in. But now it's dominated by college alumni teams and the fan bases because the tournament has to make money, right? They got to sell tickets. So where
Right.
they sell most tickets is when they place the regionals in these towns because the
Gotcha.
fans come out and fill the arenas to come watch the guys they used to watch 10 years ago play.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So let's talk about alumni. Yeah, since we're talking about that. So obviously Alumni Direct is a big part of what we do. But when you were at school, and then it's going to be a two-part question. When you were at school, were there was the school encouraging alumni athletes, to come back and not just for the golf tournaments or the one-time thing, the homecoming, but to work with the athletes?
Absolutely not. No. And the school that I went to, again, it was a Division III college.
Okay.
We don't really produce pro athletes. The school that I went to, there wasn't one before me, and me and one teammate both went pro. Nobody has made it since. So my school was not invested in sports. Period. We had sports
Okay.
because every school has sports, but they weren't invested.
Right. Okay. And then so, and has it changed at all today? Like, did they ever reach out to you, or are you seeing like, some of your athlete friends getting, reached out to by the schools to come back and kind of take more of that mentoring role?
They don't reach out to me, but one thing I will say is that they did start a sports Hall of Fame, and I saw a player he was like many years behind me, but I think he was like a freshman when I was a senior, and he was very good. He put up great stats, so he got into the basketball Hall of Fame, and a girl who was there when I was there, she got into the girls Hall of Fame for basketball. There's only two people in there, so they did start that. That's the closest that they've come. But I'm on their alumni email list, and I see the stuff they send. No, they're just not invested in sports.
Yeah, and it's hard. I mean, I think we encourage. Obviously, I mean, I for me, like when I meet alumni, I'm down here in South Florida. When I meet alumni from University of Delaware, it's I'm kind of passionate about how can I help them, and I think a lot of people have that, especially kind of when you're out of that market. So it's something that I think schools and athletic departments probably need to take a better look at, because I think athletes are willing to come back and not just for like. For like I said, for those just the one offs, but more to help these give back to these other athletes.
That's
Um,
right. And if you don't mind.
yeah,
So when I first stopped playing, so it's about 2014, 2015, I reached out to my school and said, hey, here's who I am. And I sold myself. Basically told them who I was, what I was doing. I wrote books. And I was getting into the first thing I did when I got out of playing was going into professional speaking. So I said, bring me back and bring me in as a speaker. I'll come speak to the school. Just cover the travel. Give me a hotel. You don't have to pay me. Just bring me in to speak, because I was just looking to get my name and brand out there anyway. And I went to this school, so this just gives me a good reason. And they said, all right, we'll see. Let's see what we can do. But again, they aren't really that invested in the sports program. So someone who used to play there doesn't really carry a lot of
right,
weight, at least in the minds of the people, the powers that be in the front office of the school, so to speak. So
right.
I guess they didn't really care. But that's their loss. They should have brought me in. But hey.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of people felt that. I mean, I was on a call and with a former Hall of Fame player who played 10 years in the NFL, too, like Hall of Famer in college, played
Mhm.
10 years in the NFL, and he's like, "Hey, reach out to me. I want to help." And like, they're not reaching out. It's just
Right.
so it's a two-way street. I mean, it's got to be the school's got to be reaching out. Obviously, the athletes, want to do it as well.
Yeah, and there has to be somebody in the administration who understands what we're talking about here, who can then say, hey, they had to be the champion who says,
Right.
hey, we need to bring in some former athletes because, and here's an example, here's this person, here's this person, this person, but there's nobody there who understands what we're talking about right here, then it's not going
Right. No, for sure. So here's a tough question. I always say it's like my new wrinkle to the podcast. So, what advice would you give to freshman Dre?
Wow, that's an excellent question. What advice would you give to freshman Dre? Wow. I would say just understand the value of the college experience. And this is something that I told one of my younger cousins, who's many years younger than me, when he was about to start college. Ex- Take advantage of the college experience, because when that 4 years is over, and you will never have more fun than being in a situation where you're around a bunch of people in your age bracket. We're all there for the same reason, all in the same geographical location. You have semi autonomy. You can do whatever you want to do, where at the same time you still have that umbilical cord back to your parents just in case something goes terribly wrong. But you can still do what you want, and they don't know about everything you're doing unless you tell them. Right? So that's, I would say, take advantage of that 4 years or however long it's going to be, And because when it's over, it's over. It's not going to be like that when you get out of there and you get into the quote unquote real world.
So now we'll fast forward because you kind of hit on it a little bit, but what advice would you give to senior Dre?
Advice to senior Dre is build those relationships. I mean, that's the number one thing. Number one thing I got out of college was the relationships, the connections, the people who I met there. It wasn't anything that I learned in a classroom. Yes, I needed the 4 years to get better at basketball because I wasn't no Kobe. I couldn't go from high school to the NBA. I needed to get better at basketball, but the relationships, the friendships, the connections, the social interaction was the most valuable thing I got from college. So take advantage of that because, again, when it's over, it is over.
Right, right. So, all right. So let's talk now about transition out of sports. So again, we talk about for you're fortunate to make it to the next level, but talk about your transition from college basketball to professional basketball.
Yes, that was a rough transition. It really wasn't even a transition. It was kind of like a stop, then a roll, then a start. So it's kind of what it was. I wish it was a transition. So getting out of college, again, Division III college, nobody checks for players from where I played to go play pro. Maybe there are some D3 leagues where they actually have some pros every now and then. We had zero. So my first year out of college, I worked at a couple of regular jobs. I worked at Foot Locker, selling sneakers. I worked at a gym called Valley Total Fitness selling gym memberships. And Valley's out of business now, but not because of me. I sold a lot of memberships. This is 2004, by the way, graduate. So that first year I'm working. In the summer of 2005, I went to an exposure camp, which, Rob, I'm sure you know what they are. Exposure camp is like a job fair for athletes. So 200 of us all think we're good enough to play pro or keep playing pro. We all come to one place. We paid to go to this event. It was $250. I paid in cash because I didn't have a credit card or a bank account at the time. And you just play for 2 days. You just play games with these people who you just met the other day. And you're just trying to impress. Just trying to impress one of the scouts, agents, coaches, managers, owners who is in attendance at this event. I did pretty well at that event. Didn't get signed to a contract on the spot. Had to go back to work. The event was in Orlando, Florida, by the way. I'm from Philadelphia, so we drove 19 hours to Orlando. Had to drive 19 hours back. I had to be back at work on Monday. The camp was Saturday, Sunday. We left on Friday. Camp Saturday, Sunday. I had to be back at work on Monday. Back at work on Monday, and I started cold calling basketball agents. And I called about 60 agents who I could find a phone number for. I got in touch with 20. Those 20 said, let me see what you have. I sent them a link to my scouting report, and I sent them a copy of the footage from this event. And that copy was this thing called a VHS tape, which Rob, I'm sure you remember those.
Yeah.
All right, so the Gen Zers listen to this, ask your parents, they'll tell you what a VHS tape is. So I made copies of that VHS tape. I sent it out to 20 agents. One of those 20 agents I got back in touch with, and he said, I'll represent you. He got me my first contract. That was in Kaunas, Lithuania, and this is late August 2005. So that's how I started playing pro.
That's interesting. So now you played for quite a few years there, but like ultimately when you started seeing, I guess it kind of winding down. I mean, you probably started playing sports, pretty young, like everybody else, other athletes, and so ultimately when it was time to kind of hang it up, so to speak, how was that transition into it was whether we call it the real world or just the different world, the career world?
Mm-hmm. Well, it was extremely easy for me because of my difference in circumstances. So my situation was a lot different than most athletes, Rob, because of my background. So I got to tell you a couple back pieces to the story. So number one, around 2002, I'm still in college. I responded to this bulletin board posting that said, and by the way, Gen Zers don't know what a bulletin board is. It's like the internet, but in real life. Right? It has an announcement. They actually put it in a physical place. You have to go by there to see it. It's not on the phone. So I responded to this bulletin board posting that said, you want to make some extra money. Turns out the person who posted it was doing network marketing. Most people know what that is. So I didn't stay in network marketing, but I did go to a few of the meetings. So at the meetings, this guy was just explaining entrepreneurship and business and sales and ways to make money that were different than what we were traditionally taught. And I said, this makes perfect sense. Why aren't they talking about this in college? I have a business degree. They weren't talking about this in my classes. So I just kept that in the back of my mind. So one of the books that the speaker would recommend us read was called Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. I went and read that book, and I just kept in the back of my mind what Robert Kiyosaki was talking about in the book. He was like, you don't always have to trade your time for money. That's not the only way to make money. And if you really want to become rich, you need to acquire assets. You need to create things or own things that put money in your pocket that does not require your physical effort. I just kept that in the back of my mind. Didn't do anything with it because I knew I was about to go trade my time for money by being an athlete. So that's what I'm going to do first. So I went and became an athlete, started playing pro ball in about 2009, Rob. So I started playing in 2005, played in a couple places. 2009, I'm a free agent. And again, the people who watch sports on TV, the guys you see on TV, those are the stars. They're few and far between. A lot of athletes have careers kind of how mine was, where sometimes you don't know when the next job is coming or if. So the phone's not ringing. 2009. I'm a free agent. Phone's not ringing. I'm home in the United States. And I said to myself, okay, what if the phone does not ring again? Because there was no guarantee it was going to ring. So I, at this time, had a little audience on this new website called YouTube that said you can put videos up as much as you want for free. So that VHS tape that I mentioned a few minutes ago, I got that put on a CD, audio data CD, put that on in a desktop computer and uploaded that footage to YouTube. That's how I got started online. So I started creating content in 2005 before we were calling it content. So I started to build this audience of basketball players on YouTube because all I was posting was just me doing my workouts in an empty gym. And I was just showing players how I practice. I didn't think it was anything unique about this because I thought every player practiced the way that I did. It turns out that was not the case. So it was very unique that I was just showing people, here's how to work on dribbling. Here's how to work on defense. Here's work on jumping. Here's how to shoot a jump shot. Here's how to do a crossover. So I was just teaching this stuff. So I had a little audience online, 2009. Phone's not ringing. Now, mind you, there's no money to be made by putting videos on YouTube. So I was just doing it sporadically, right? Now, I just finished reading another book. This is called The 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. Now, Tim was basically doing the same thing Robert Kiyosaki did, just in the digital space. He was talking about how to do all this stuff on the internet. So I combined the knowledge and insights from both of those guys' books, and I started creating my own products. So the first product I created was a $4.99 program for basketball players. Actually, two of them, one for dribbling and one for shooting. And I announced those on my YouTube channel, and they immediately started selling. Now, again, $5 a piece, so it's not like I got rich off this, but I'm making money. All right. So here's the thing, Rob. Now I finally was doing what Robert Kiyosaki said. I was creating assets. Now I can make money without me having to physically do the work. So I thought to myself, okay, if I step on the gas on this and pour some kerosene on this, maybe if the phone doesn't ring again, I could just do this. I could just do making money on the internet. Who thought that would be a thing? All right. So again, 2009. So that's what I started doing. I also started writing more blogs because I've always been a writer. I've always been a reader and a writer. And I credit my mother for that. She's an educator, had me reading from a very young age. So I started writing more blogs just about basketball, about my experiences traveling the world and things like that, and just about my whatever insights or ideas or perspectives. And I started putting videos on YouTube every day because at this point, YouTube got purchased by Google. And now they said, the more your views get seen, more your videos get seen, now we'll actually pay you because now they had a partner program. So those of you not old enough to remember, there was a time you could watch YouTube all day and there were no ads. So when Google bought YouTube, that's when they put the ads on there, and the ads reflect money. You see ads, somebody's making money. So that's when they start putting ads on the videos. So now I'm like, okay, I'm putting up video every day. And that's what I started doing. So I started doing those three things all at the same time while my basketball career was at a standstill. Now, luckily, the phone rang again, Rob, and I kept playing ball again up through 2015. But now at this point, I have two careers going at the same time. So now I'm creating content every day. I'm writing every day, and I'm creating new products and selling them through my content and through my blogging. So by the time I stopped playing ball in 2015, I already had a business. I was already doing business things. So two things here, and I'll wrap up the answer to this question. Number one, the athletes who are watching me, many of whom would not reach the collegiate, let alone the pro level, saw what I was doing business-wise, and they started asking me about, hey, Dre, maybe I want to do something like what you're doing, or how do I transition into business? Because they didn't want to go. One thing a lot of athletes fear is the athlete career ending, and then they have to go into what you said, the real world, right? Going to do regular work, like what they see their parents doing or something like that. So they feared that. So when they saw me doing what I was doing, they said, well, maybe I could do that. That was a little bit easier and more fun. That was number one. And number two, because I was talking about the mindset pieces that came from sports, because a lot of athletes were just asking me about, Dre, I have the skills, I'm doing the drills that you're showing, but for some reason it's not applying in the game. It's not connecting. So that's when I started talking about mindset, like discipline, confidence, mental toughness, those things. I did that in a video called The Weekly Motivation. I did that video every Monday for 400 Mondays in a row. Wow. That became the foundation, Rob, for what I have now. Because not only did the athletes appreciate it, but also people who were not athletes started hearing me and my approach. And they started telling me, Dre, I don't play sports, but I like your approach. I like your style. I like how you talk about things. So this told me I had a bigger audience than just basketball players. And also, this is practice for me. 400 Mondays in a row talking about this stuff. I got
Yeah.
really good at expressing myself and articulating. So by the time I stopped playing, I wasn't starting at zero. I was full speed ahead. All I had to do was drop basketball. And now I just got more time to do the stuff I was already doing.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I mean, it's great lessons for other people to get involved. I mean, I've talked to some of the other guests too, talk about like while they're still playing, getting involved in real estate and other types of things. So maybe like summarize a couple key words of advice to athletes as they ultimately transition out of sports.
Man, well, number one is understand that there will be a transition. That's the number one thing athletes need to understand. And even when I was working with the NBA and the G League, a lot of athletes just don't want to think about it and I can understand it because had I been in the G League or in the NBA, I wouldn't want to think about it either because it's almost like in my mind, I'd be thinking I'm kind of fighting against myself. Like I'm here every day working on my game, trying to get to the LA Lakers or trying to get a 5-year contract. But now I'm going to start thinking about what happens after basketball. It's almost like I'm fighting against my own goals by even considering the thought. And that's how I felt when I was talking to a lot of the G League players that they just want to play ball and they don't want to think about after because, again, this is like counteracting your own energy, your own efforts. But understand that there will be a transition. And often I heard this player named Steve Blake. He used to play at Maryland. You remember him?
Name sounds familiar.
So he was a guy who he said this is it's funny. He said sometimes as an athlete, you're the last one to realize your career is over, right? Because the phone's not ringing, and
Right.
finally you realize, okay, maybe it's not going to ring again, and maybe I'm retired. You didn't even know. So most athletes don't go on some farewell tour like Kobe Bryant. That's not how most athletes' careers end.
Right.
It just ends, and you're the last one to find out that it's over. So understand there will be a transition, and think about what else you can bring to the table and be a contributing and allow yourself to be a contributing member of society outside of throwing or catching or bouncing a ball. Because after you stop playing, you don't matter as much as you did when you were playing. You don't get
Right.
into clubs for free anymore. You don't get free meals anymore because you don't play anymore. So
Right.
understand that transition can be very abrupt. I'm assuming that's why you asked that question because for a lot
Yeah.
of people it is very abrupt. So luckily for me, I had a taste of that transition many times while I was still playing, where most athletes don't.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, that's great advice, and I think there's always light at the end of the tunnel. Like we talk a lot about, there's a lot of support out there, which kind of we'll funnel it, kind of wrap it up with just what you're doing today. But people want to help, and I think athletes. I mean, everybody's prideful, and you work hard, and just everything that the whole DNA and skill set of the athlete. But there's things people want to be around athletes. I know there's a lot of businesses that want to hire athletes. So we definitely encourage to, like you said, start getting that mindset of, kind of what's next. So let's talk about. I mean, I know we could probably talk for hours, so we'll consolidate and do the Reader's Digest version, as they say. But let's talk a little bit about your work on your game. Let's talk about some of your books, and also your podcast.
Sure. So, Work on Your Game Incorporated is the name of our company, and place that we're most focused is our university. It's just called Work on Your Game University. That's where we do all our coaching, consulting, speaking, our programs, etc. So, anyone want to learn more about that? It's just workonyourgameuniversity.com. As far as the show, I have a solo show, masterclass, and most people call it podcast. Comes out every day. It is called Work on Your Game. As you mentioned at the beginning, Rob, it's almost we're at about 28, almost 2,900 episodes of that show. It's been going since 2016, and then you can find me on all the social media platforms. I'm most active probably on Instagram, just my name at Dre Baldwin, but I'm on all of them. So LinkedIn, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, whatever else is out there, I'm on all of them. We're public on everything, so I'm pretty easy to find.
Okay, and then you said like you've written a bunch of books. I mean, you said I think it's like over 30, but what are they all in the same kind of genre, so to speak, or are they all different? Talk a little bit about the books.
Yeah, 35 books officially. We just sent another one to the printer yesterday, so soon to be 36. I produce pretty quickly, so we got 35 books, and they're all on different subjects. Mostly it's in a personal and professional development realm, I would say, if you had to categorize them. But I have a book called The Overseas Basketball Blueprint. So if there's any ball players here who want to play basketball overseas, literally overseas, you can just go to balloverseas.com. We give you the book free, and we'll cover the shipping. And then all of our other books. Once you come into our world, we got books on basically anything you could want when it comes to just bettering yourself, personal growth, personal success, and personal development.
Okay, great. And then so you have a, like I'm assuming because as many things have you done, you probably have a team. So like there's or I'm assuming it's like national, and how do people is it in person? Is everything online? Like how does all that work?
As far as which part?
Just the whole like the mentoring, the coaching, the different things that you're doing.
Oh, so if someone wants to work with me, you just go to Work on Your Game University, and we'll tell you what your options are. You'll see the layout of what our program is about. You can schedule a time to talk with us. We'll send you some links to get some free stuff from us. So all of that you can do pretty much virtually, but it's not limited to any one geographical area. So we're worldwide, international.
Gotcha. And then you do. You said you mentioned also you've professional speaker. I know you've done some TEDx speaking. Talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So I've done 4 TEDx talks up to this point. May do a fifth, may do some more. We'll see. And you can see all my TED Talks. I've done TED Talks basically around stuff that I just mentioned. So discipline, confidence, mental toughness, career transition. I have TED Talks on all of those. So if you just go to workonyourgame.com/TED, TED, workonyourgame.com/TED, all the TED Talks are right there on that one page. There's 4 of them. And there's a related book to each talk. So you can see the link to get that specific book right there on that page as well.
Great, great. So we'll definitely put all this in the show notes. I mean, this has been great. I always enjoy talking to other athletes and then talking to folks like yourself that are in the podcast world. Like I said, I got a long way to go before I get into your realm with as many as you've done. But I definitely encourage people to reach out to Dre. You can find us at alumnidirect.com. If you go to our YouTube channel, you can find Athletes and Entrepreneurs, the Alumni Journey there, as well as across all the different podcast networks. And we encourage people to watch and listen. I mean, this is something every week we just have this great content from all these athletes like Dre, and we really want to make a difference. And I think as you get little tidbits each week, there's things that can definitely help athletes kind of attack this problem that we're facing today. But Dre, thanks again. It's been great.
Thank you for sharing your platform, Rob. I appreciate the opportunity.
You're welcome.